Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Lewis, the Director of Planning and Zoning, the City of Somerville. I call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. The time is now 7:05 p.m. on August 27th, 2020. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, ULC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatone's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Urban Design Commission will be conducted via remote participation. Members of the Urban Design Commission present are myself, Co-Chair Sarah Lewis, Co-Chair Luisa Oliveira, Frank Valdez, Deborah Fennick, and Andrew Auba. Joining us this evening are also senior planners Dan Bartman from Planning and Zoning and Courtney Kirk from Public Space and Urban Forestry. So the first item on our agenda this evening is a continuation from our previous meeting, and that would be 70 through 72 Union Square. Dan, do we have a presentation for them?
I've made Adam Dash and Will, both presenters, that we should also be able to hear. So if anyone, either one of them would also like to present, I can give you the presenter.
Yeah, hi, this is Adam Dash. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville. Here I'm representing Everest Realty Trust, which is the applicant owner of 71 to 72 Union Square. As you know, this is the second UDC meeting on the project, which is to add 2 floors to the existing single-story commercial structure in the heart of Union Square. And just to give you an idea of where we are in the process, we've gone through a Historic Preservation Commission where they found the property not to be, the structure not to be preferably preserved. So there's no demo review that's going to be undertaken. We still have to go to the planning board for special permits for the use that we're proposing. But in the current situation, the project has been revised based on the last UDC meeting comments, and we believe it complies with the architectural design guidelines, which apply. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Will Chalfant, the architect.
Thanks, Adam. So how do I share my screen on this one? Because I'm not seeing that. Oh, look at that. Just as I said it, it popped up. Okay. All right. So can everyone see this?
I can.
Looking good.
Okay. All right. Great. So thank you again, Will Chalfant from Khalsa Design. Just to refamiliarize yourself with the project. Of course, this is the formerly Subway and most recently liquor store in Union Square, adjacent to the Independent and in between the Independent and the former police station. So I know we've gone over the contextual buildings in the neighborhood. The zoning, we'll address that at a later date. Floor plans, just to orient you, on the far left is our lower level basement. The next would be the first floor, which contains the entry and queuing area, vestibule, security check. The rear of the space is the dispensary itself. And then the upper floor will be education, and then office space on the very top. So, okay, whoops. Sorry about that. And here we have the proposed elevations, but I think I'd rather skip through this and go to the proposal and show the before and after. So what we heard from the board was that the proposal is trying a little too hard to fit into the historic nature of its neighbors. There was a third floor trellis and narrow patio space that many felt really weren't appropriate for the building itself, and that the building read flat and lacked texture. And as well, we had an abundance of cornices. So we've revised this in a few different ways. We tried to use traditional materials such as brick in a slightly more contemporary fashion. This allows the building to not feel dated, but also transition into the next phase of Union Square. This texture that we've created is being achieved through creating some pilasters using the brick, as well as some, for lack of a better term, a Flemish bond half brick, which provides that texture in between the windows. We've also tried to simplify the material palette. We'd shown previously a lot of limestone, some different precast elements, and really the building reads better per your guidance, which I think was really well thought out. The building reads better as almost an entirely brick building. We're still showing a stone water table at the base, but we wanted to bring some of that texture down to the ground level with these brick pilasters and make a more of a tactile feel to the ground level. And then, of course, we've removed that cornice and that patio space, which allows the building to read, I think, a lot more successfully in its fabric. So here we've shown some. This is sort of like a pop-up version. We've got the left, middle, and right. Obviously, it's all looking at the front, but I just wanted to sort of outline the materials that we're proposing to use. So again, starting on the left, at the ground level, we're showing a stone water table under the center portion of the storefront. That's flanked by these brick pilasters that step in and out, step out towards the center in each pilaster, giving some depth to the facade. And then again, a stone precast cornice, precast sills, but then we're using a soldier course for the header on these windows. And then the top cornice is brick made up of soldier course. And we're proposing that in a different hue than the rest of the building. I looked at it originally as a traditional brick, and it kind of got lost. And I think this creates a nice cap to the building. We've also changed the window style, but maintained the entrance canopy, as well as obviously the two entrances that we have going into the building. So again, I know previously it had a bit of a amateurish rendering, so we've changed that. And so this shows how it fits in with the neighbors. And there had been mention of the right wall in this view that faces the Independent being somewhat blank. And we had originally shown it as CMU, and upon further reflection realized that really isn't going to be acceptable, because I don't think anyone expects the Independent to go anywhere. So we obviously can't infill windows here being on the zero lot line, but we thought this was a nice opportunity to implement, to possibly showcase rather a mural of a local artist. I know Somerville has many, as well as Cambridge. I'm working with Street Theory in Cambridge on a few other projects. So I think that was this is a great opportunity to utilize an otherwise blank wall as something that sort of activates that facade. So, I don't want to take too much time. I'd like to hear the board's input here. So I think I'll click off if that works for everyone, and we can begin the discussion, unless you want me to leave it up. It's up to you. Okay. So I'd love to hear your input.
I had a question. The building to the left, are those windows that you were abutting to disappearing?
On the police station?
Yeah.
No. So the building actually, I should probably share my screen again. Yeah, hang on one second. Sorry. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
So it's actually notched right here.
Okay.
Which allows us not to cover, I mean, those windows can still be utilized, but you know, because of the sort of angle of the building itself and the lot.
Yeah, yeah. And did you stay with just a regular standard brick?
Yeah, full bed brick, not a thin brick. You know, I think I haven't gotten into the actual color yet. I mean, I think we'd be open to discussion on that. I would probably go with maybe a light iron spot, something with a little bit of texture to it and color variation, opposed to a glazed brick or something like that. Maybe we look at that for that top cornice, but in general, more of a traditional, you know, God, I forget the term of the red color that we use on a lot of projects, but you know, we'd certainly be willing to provide different samples for that if the board wanted to see some different options.
Yeah, no, we would love to see some options. I would like to say that I think that it's a leap from where you presented last time to now. I think that the texture of the articulation of the brick and what you've done to the facade really makes it stand out a little bit and gives it a little contemporary component to it without necessarily trying to blend in with historicism. So I think that it's I complimented on the fact that you did a really good job trying to address some of the concerns that we had from last time.
Thank you.
You're muted, Deborah.
Did.
Should be good now.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So I have a question about the Flemish Bond area. So the panels underneath the windows is where the Flemish Bond is. Is there a plane difference, you know, or is it so is there going to be a shadow play in that area?
Yes, there is.
Mm-hmm.
I can.
So that's a little hard to see here, but I thought that was the intent.
I'm going to share my screen real quick if you don't mind, and I'll just sort of zoom in. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. So yes, the intention is for, again, using, you know, nominal sizing here, but to create almost a, I'd say a 2 3/8 inch plane difference between the recessed and the forward to really get a shadow line there. I think I mean, in this view, it reads a little zigzaggy, but I thought it was really interesting to create texture like that. Very simple way, something that can be done by most masons, and yet really kind of gives the building more texture, obviously.
Yeah, and then what kind of relief are you getting on the pilasters? You know, it steps twice. Yeah.
So like the full depth. So, yeah. The full depth is around 8 inches from face of building out. So it's not, you know, dramatic, but it's enough to, you know, give it a little more texture again, not to keep using that word, but that really was the intention here. And
yeah, I think given the scale of the building, that's probably those are workable dimensions. Yeah, I agree with Frank's comment that this has really come a long way. And I also really appreciate the views you gave us, especially that one that Frank can ask the same question, what happened to those windows? You know, we couldn't have seen it in context as well with that. I mean, I think, you know, this is very helpful in being able, you know, to talk about the project. The one thing that is, it's a minor thing that isn't quite squaring with me is the bottom, the storefront area. So up to that first cornice feels somewhat contemporary in the glazing that's input and stuff. And then the glazing above feels very thin and sort of a different language. I know it is, well, it's a different kind of space, but it's in my mind, you know, it's maybe got too much detail to it, you know, to go with the proportions and the scale of the glazing below. Not that you have to match that, because I know that is sort of storefront and you want it to have a different scale and more open. But that's the one area I feel like it isn't quite working for me.
Just so I understand, would you rather see more muntins on the lower level, or rather no, sorry.
Maybe I would look at the upper level and
Okay,
see,
okay.
yeah. And, you know, see what, I don't know whether those are operable windows and how they operate. That may start to suggest a language to you about, you know, how to break them up. But
Yeah, you know, we originally had the, sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
No, I was just going to say, you know, we originally had the double hung windows, which, you know, are really I mean, they're obviously traditional in a lot of instances, but I think are predominantly more applicable for residential application. And so what I was trying to do was use something a little more akin to the commercial and office use that this will be. But I understand what you're saying. I think we could certainly look at changing up the, you know, the mullions on this and giving a little more relationship to the glazing below.
Yeah, and I don't know if they are they operable, you know, so we'll, you know, I could imagine those, you know, having an operable, what is it, awning type of window or that, you know, and when you start to look at the assembly of those things, it would give it a scale that you're trying to reduce the scale by, you know, having those divided lights on the top.
Yeah, I would probably ask that the, oh, I'm echoing, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on. But I would make the top portion operable on this. You know, obviously I'd have to abide by code and egress requirements, but you know, I can certainly look at that and work with the city. I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. No, I think I agree with everything that Frank and Deborah have already said. I'm very happy to have seen the porch go away, and I like the activation on the side of the building. I think everything from sort of the register, the second and third floors looks great. I like a lot. I agree with Deborah's comments about maybe tying it back with some of the mullions. On the lower level, I could almost see that the overhang that we have where the business name is being a little thicker too. But I think generally speaking, it's come a long way since the last time we saw it. And I think the improvements are great. And I appreciate everything you guys have done in response to our comments from the previous session.
Yeah, if I could just respond to the canopy thickness for a second. I agree that it could be a little thicker. This is sort of I'm walking the line of trying to meet the zoning where it's required the certain percentage of glazing. And so this may be something that I can talk with staff about, but if that were to get a little deeper, I don't know if I would still satisfy the requirements, because I'm right at the 70% that I need for ground story fenestration, glazing rather. But yeah, I don't disagree.
It does look a little thin, especially with the business name and the numbers applied to it. I think that's reinforcing how thin it looks.
Yeah.
I don't know, to me. But
Or you
all in all,
rethink the signage, you know, maybe the canopy is okay because it has a depth to it. So it's going to be experienced as something that feels much heavier than it is. But I think maybe that's not the place to put signage.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that the zoning allows for possibly the signage should go on top of the canopy, freestanding letters, but I'd want to work with staff on that, because I know there are a lot more requirements now involved in that. But that may not limit this. I mean, obviously there are size requirements, but you're right. The thin nature of this kind of pigeonholes you as far as the size of that signage. So that's the point well taken.
Okay, Dan, does it help you from an administrative standpoint for us to go through each of these design guidelines?
So the chosen option was made at the last meeting, so
Correct.
the board only needs to identify if there are any specific guidelines pertinent to this specific building at its location, or and/or if all the design guidelines have been met to their satisfaction. If any of them have not been met, then it wants them to the rules ask them to make a recommendation. But if everything is if everything's been done to their satisfaction, it's just an affirmative vote.
Does anybody have any comments on any of the design guidelines as to whether there's something that we want to make a priority? I personally think that this new design meets all of the requirements. I do want to make sure that the articulation remains through design and construction, and we don't lose the texture, especially of the pilasters and the brick detailing. So I think my opinion is I would like one of those to be a primary guideline, but that's the only one
I would have, Sarah, I think that, having come this far, I think that we want to confirm that the articulation of the brick is what moves forward. And that would support that. I think that the project at this stage has complied with everything from the guidelines and everything that what we said. We would like, I think, in the end, just like to see some of the material color palette in real life at a certain point, what the cornice, what the brick is, and what the brick at the top that changes texture and how it relates to the cornice color would be, and just really a palette of what that is.
So could that be handled with a material board, or would you like to, are we talking about like a mock-up prior to construction really?
Sure, it could be a mock-up, it could be, I'll leave it to the rest of the board to say, but I think that it could be done in the mock-up. We've done that lots of times. I just like to make sure that some of those colors are approved, moving forward. But I think that overall, this is consistent.
This is Adam. I guess as a
Isn't it-
procedural matter, because this is all kind of new. Would this be something that would be a staff approval later as a condition, or is this something that actually has to come back to the UDC?
Adam, we've been sending them, having communication with the UDC, but allowing you to move forward into applying for site plan approval.
Okay.
In the past, we've had materials brought in before the mock-up is made, because once you've made the mock-up, you've probably, you've already ordered the materials, or, it's sort of maybe dicey timing for you. So it could make sense to bring the materials in, in a sample presentation. And that could, that could be a little less risky than waiting until, you build it on a sample panel on site.
Could I ask a COVID-related question as to how we do that now? Because I can't actually show up with a brick and show you.
Well, I can, we just can't touch it together, right?
Well, they're not in City Hall. There's nowhere to do this unless you want to come to my office or Will's office or something.
You can put it outside, give us a call.
Throw it through your window, Frank. How's that?
One by one.
I'll throw each brick through your window.
That's a good question.
Adam, we deliver this as a condition. We'll have to, because this will advance over the next month or two. Who knows what situation we might be facing at that point in time. So we'll figure out a way to convey the knowledge to the UDC. But we'll condition the site plan approval specifically because site plan approval happens right at the beginning of really design development, and you might make further design changes as you advance.
Oh, and we don't know what the planning board's going to suggest.
Correct.
But yeah, We could, I mean, like I said, Will could have them in his office as samples. You could come by individually and look at, or I could, or something like that if we can't get them to City Hall, but I don't think we can stick that kind of thing in a Dropbox. It's going to be too much.
Okay.
Just saying. Or we could take photographs and do it that way, however you want to do it.
I do have
Yeah.
a brick rep who is overly helpful as far as driving samples around. Maybe give me your addresses. I'll just have her do a little tour of the town. Rachel Brewster, if you need someone from Spalding Brick. So,
Oh, I know those guys.
Sure. All right, is there anything else you want to flag as I think we've got so Dan, you have notes of the materials being reviewed. Are we ready to take a vote?
Are you voting on the two Pilaster design guidelines as priority? Is that?
Yes. That was my intent, if the rest of the board is okay with that. So
I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's important.
all right, so we'll do a roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes. Thumbs up.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah?
Yep. Yes.
Louisa? Okay. You're muted.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I think that you have to say someone has to motion to take a vote on this. Sorry.
You are correct. I'm horrible with these procedural things. You are correct.
I motion to take a vote on this. On
Priority design guidelines.
the priority design guidelines, the pilasters being, somebody else do this. Okay.
That the two facade guidelines, piers, pilasters, or other features defining each architectural bay should either extend all the way to the ground or terminate at any horizontal articulation defining the base of the building. And piers and pilasters or other features defining each architectural bay should always project forward and be uninterrupted by any horizontal articulation, excluding any horizontal articulation used to differentiate the base of the building. As both of those as priority design.
So is the motion to create those as conditions to the design?
As priority design guidelines.
Okay, so I motion to make what Sarah just said as priority design guidelines.
Second.
Who was that
Yes.
seconded? Frank? Okay. And all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So all in favor?
But you
Yes.
have,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Sarah, you have to call the roll call.
Do the roll call. Yes. Andrew?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Louisa?
Yes.
And Sarah votes yes also.
So as a procedural matter, is that the only vote that we need from the UDC at this point to go forward to the planning board?
There's one more, provided that all of the design guidelines are satisfied,
So that's
which
the
is
second.
the one remaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Do
they're
I
all
have a
satisfied, it's one vote.
Okay, do I have a motion that all design guidelines have been achieved?
Yes, I motion.
Second by
Deborah.
Deborah seconds. All right, roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Louisa,
Yes.
and I, Sarah, also vote yes. So thank you.
Thank you, William.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the input, and I do think this is a much more successful project, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you all very much for your time and your input on this. Your expertise was invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Bye-bye.
I
All right, so next we have a building on Broadway that I can't remember the address of right this moment.
Oh, I've got it here.
152
152.
or 158 Broadway.
Okay, hello, this is Michael LeBlanc from UTL. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, okay. So Dan, are you gonna give me the ability to present here?
Do you need presenter? Just you?
Yeah, me, please.
Yeah. Do you have a video? Do you have video?
I do, hold on a second. It's not showing?
It isn't.
You see me now? Ah, there we go.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome, sorry about that. Hold on, and let me know, let's see. Hold on. Dan, is there a way for me to start, or can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, you can, okay, great. And is it, hold on, let me, this, and,
Presentation mode, you got it.
yep, all right, here we go. This is the title slide then, yes? Okay, great. So thanks everyone. We're gonna be presenting here the our mixed use project here at 152 to 158 Broadway. You know, it's a project that we really love for a lot of reasons, and it's mostly because we really love this neighborhood. Broadway is a really unique street within Somerville, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means to us in a moment. We're just going to hit some basic summary about the development. Hopefully you had a chance to review all that. Talk a little bit about context, get into the facade design, ground floor, storefront, and then we're going to have MDLA present the landscape strategies for this. We won't go through any of the appendix information unless we need to call it up for some reason that if there's a question about anything. So in general, we're in an MR5 zoning district. The total gross square footage of the project is about 38,000 square feet. We also have about 3,000 square feet of outdoor space, most of which is amenitized for our residents. We're at 5 stories at 58 feet, 45 residential units, 9 of which are affordable, and 2 of those which are 3-bedroom family units. We've got about 4,100 square feet of leasable retail space at the ground floor. We're exceeding our green score by an awful lot, which we love. And we're also planning to go for passive house certification on this and net zero ready. And one of the things I love when a city adopts new zoning codes, when those zoning codes incentivize us to do really cool things like passive house, so we think it's great. Our client, the proponent of this, is actually now in the process of getting himself passive house certified, which never would have happened if it wasn't for your new very cool zoning guidelines. And so we think that that's a sign of a great. It's a great tip of the hat to the new zoning. I'll get right into some of the context here. Like we said, Broadway is an immensely walkable neighborhood. We're very close to transportation. We've got grocery stores, post offices, convenience stores, takeout food, bar and restaurant, shopping, and parks, all very, very close to us. And it really is, a great pedestrian zone or pedestrian district, and has been called out as such in the new zoning guidelines. This is a quick look at some of the existing buildings that are there. With the red dash line, you can see is the extent of our property. It's just over 100 feet from edge to edge of our property. And you can see the buildings here, some are which are 3-story residential, some are 4-story with a kind of base middle top to them. We think that's an important clue for us. We also want to note that this really is a kind of a clapboard neighborhood right along here, and you know, we don't see a whole lot of brick along this particular stretch here. So so that informed us a little bit when we started thinking about our materiality. This is a view from across the street looking at our building. You can see there's an apartment building to the right of us. It's 4 stories. And then looking at our building again, trying to pick up on that base, middle, and top. We took a lot of effort looking at that top penthouse level or that 5th floor. It does set back per the zoning, but we set it back even further in some locations to try to you know, break the scale of that top level down, objectify those smaller components at the top, and give them a little bit of a penthouse kind of look and feel to them. We're using a 5-inch Okoskin cladding on the middle part of the building. That's a through color cementitious Farber cement panel, in this case Farber cement board, which we think is a great sort of allegory to the scale of the clapboards in the neighborhood, the scale of and the texture of the cladding that we generally have found there. The ground floor we've populated with all kinds of active uses, including our 4,100 square feet of retail, our residential lobby, and we're really happy that we're going to be closing up between the 2 existing buildings that are there right now. There are 2 driveways, and this being a pedestrian zone frowns upon the addition of curb cuts, but we're actually taking away 2 curb cuts here, creating a continuous sidewalk, and we think that works well because we're going to be working with the city departments to locate or find the best location for Uber and or Amazon type drop-off pickup out in front of the building. So we're hoping that those things can happen outboard of any of the traffic or bike lanes in the neighborhood. This is a view from the other side. One thing, I just want to go back 1 second. One thing we're trying to pick up on was the building to the right of us. The base of that, which is retail, has a kind of very strong datum just at that 1st floor level, that storefront level, and we are doing our best to kind of pick up on that and sort of continue the continuity of those active storefronts along Broadway here. Again, looking from the other side, you know, we are trying very hard to make sure that the scale of this, you know, we think scale is kind of an operative word here, you know, in terms of the components of our building, to be able to break them down into components that feel like smaller pieces, but also smaller textures when it comes to the cladding and to the top level penthouse. And this is kind of a drone shot here, almost from due south, looking from the backside of the property. Couple things here, you know, again, the zoning sometimes makes these things really easy that you've adopted, and above our 3rd floor we have you know, a required 30-foot setback from our property lines. We're taking advantage of that to make outdoor space for the residents. There's a common room on that floor that you can walk right out to an outdoor terrace. Some of that terrace is common to the entire building and all the residents. Some of those are private. We're also, because this is southeast, southwest facing facades, we are going to be shading our windows, and the windows on this backside do get a little bit smaller than the front. And again, we're doing that because we've been already modeling our passive house strategies on this, and that seems to be a really great way to kind of hit the benchmarks that we're going to try to hit there. So materials, the base of the building at the ground level is primarily a kind of warm tan gray brick. The body of the building, the kind of middle, is this Okoskin, as we were talking about, and we're trying to pick up on a kind of array of very subtly different colors that will give that facade a little more richness and really kind of play up the scale rather than making it look monolithic, making it try to look like a series of small components working together in harmony. And we are setting the windows back from that outer face or outer facade in order to do a couple of things. One is that we feel like it gives the building a lot more depth. We're emphasizing the frame around each of those windows, and it also works because this is our northeast facade right along Broadway here, and we're using that as a shading device, particularly in the summer months when that sun's coming up north of due east and becomes a big heat gain in the morning for some of these buildings. At the very top, we're using a concealed standing seam metal panel for those sort of penthouse objects up on top there, and we've got a steel basically picket rail just above the fourth floor, which gives us our guardrail for the terraces where that fifth floor is set back. But it also gives a little bit more filigree to the top of that, and gives it a kind of ornamentation just above the cladding of the main facade. So I think we didn't read the guidelines perfectly, that we were supposed to come to you with a couple of things that were completely or that were not completely worked out. We actually went through and worked out a whole bunch of stuff. And so this is probably, I think as I talked to Dan and Rebecca about this, maybe a little more developed than is typically the case. But we wanted to show you, what we call a preferred facade option, and then a couple of options that we had done along the way, and just sort of get your feedback. And again, to us, the attributes of this facade that we like a lot is it does seem to play off the scale of the neighborhood, both the materiality scale of the neighborhood and also really the form scale of the neighborhood relative to how we're breaking up some of the massing here. So this is one of our alternates we started, and these were going to be a cement board panel, but of a much larger scale. So really, we're talking about a 4 foot by 10 foot panel that we were using to create the spandrels between windows or the wall between windows. And we like this quite a lot, but we did start to think that it didn't relate particularly well to some of the surrounding buildings. And so this would have been a nice, efficient way to do that. But at the same time, it seemed to us to be just a little bit foreign. It also, we started to get, I'd say, a little bored with the top level penthouse, and they wanted to really begin to articulate that much better, so that even though it's recessive up on that upper level, that it might begin to have a little bit more life of its own. We looked at another alternate here, which we loved, as we were working through this, but we started to think that it was maybe a little bit too abstract. It was inflecting the panels between the windows in order to try to achieve that shading that we were talking about. We were able to figure that out in different ways with the facade that we've got now. But to us, this seemed, even though the scale of this was starting to feel much more like the neighborhood, the abstractness of it felt like it was a little bit or a bridge too far in the case of the neighborhood. So ground floor, we have retail 4,100 square feet. We then have our lobby area. We do have a transformer out at the front there, and we can talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But just wanted to point out that we have our bike lounge in the back. We do have a whole, that bike lounge is housing all of our bike requirements and then some. We actually see this as a really strong bike building. We think it's going to be part of the culture of this building. We're providing a workshop with racks that people can, the tools and racks will be there for people to work on their bikes, and also an outdoor bike area where people can work to repair their bikes. So just kind of honing a little bit on that ground level, we do have pilasters every 30 feet here with entrances along the way. We again are using brick between our storefront. So just going from right to left here, we do have our sort of secondary lobby, our building second egress from the upper stories on the far right. We then have our retail space that has two entrances in the event that it does end up being broken down into more than one space. To the left of that is our residential lobby. To the left of that is the entry to our bike lounge, and then to the far left is our transformer. And we're looking at a way of screening that transformer with a folding screen that's open air, so the transformer can be ventilated, but that would have movable planters in front of it, so that it wouldn't feel like it's a utility or a backup house kind of space. So we looked at a couple other options down there, and these ones, I think when we talked with Rebecca early on, she made the comment that there wasn't quite enough activity here, that maybe some of our proposed uses on that ground floor weren't active enough. And so having reshuffled some of these uses around, have a better treatment for the transformer and all that, we feel like we're creating what will be a continuous and active and comfortable ground floor storefront along that sidewalk. And again, that sidewalk, which has been made continuous, and we've gotten rid of the two curb cuts. And then, another option here, which we felt like was, again, a little bit maybe more abstract than the neighborhood probably would want. And so that's why we added our brick pilasters on those 30-foot increments. Those part of the design guidelines anyway. And we're able to activate more of that facade in general with the program. So we'll hand it over to Michael D'Angelo. Dan, I don't know if you've given him the ability to mic, but Michael, if you just tell me when to forward, I can do that for you.
One moment.
Could you guys can hear me? Good.
Yep.
Thanks. Mike D'Angelo, Michael D'Angelo Landscape Architecture. So yeah, these are some existing conditions photos. You can see relatively recently installed streetscape. We have existing street lights, existing street trees that are in good shape. We have that curb cut that Michael mentioned that we'd like to infill. And we'd like to continue the streetscape as what's there today. So reconstruct the sidewalk with concrete and replace that that brick banding along the curb. And then Michael, you could skip to the next slide. So you can see we're reconstructing the sidewalk, infilling the existing curb cut and matching that treatment. And then once you get to our property line, we start to reflect what's kind of taking place with the building. So maybe we have some permeable paver apron at the building edge that complements the facade color or the trim on the building. You can see some bike racks also in front of that mail and package room, some raised planters. And then as we work our way around to the rear of the building, we also have all permeable paving back there as well. So as Michael mentioned, there's a very large bike room, and that spills out onto a small patio that we thought it'd be kind of fun to have some outdoor workstations so you can work on your bike outside. There's a small dog run that's accessible from the lobby. And there is a very large patio in the back for use for the retail tenant. So whatever type of retail that is, they'll have access to that. And then along the property line in the rear, we want to get a lot of trees in there and really screen. You do get some pretty good southern exposure back here, even though we're down low. We have several columnar hornbeam planted against that rear fence line in the back. And again, all permeable pavers. Next slide, Michael. You could skip to the next slide. Some photos, the hornbeams on the bottom photograph. You can see they're very upright and tight, so they work great in that rear yard space. And then just some photos of, the various planters and pavers that you might see in the front of the building. This is the amenity roof terrace. So this is off of the amenity space for the building. To the left side of the plan, you'll see two private unit decks, and they're surrounded by vegetated green roof sedum trays. As you move more to the public or the main building use amenity area, we have this deck surfacing that extends out to an area with some lounge seating, chaise lounge chairs, great southern exposure on this roof terrace, which is really cool, and some flowering trees and pots, which we could uplight. And here's some press-in images. You can see the types of lounge furnishing, the vegetated green roof, the decking. We will not have a fire pit on the roof. It'll be more lounge style furnishings. And then the last piece of this is the 5th floor roof terrace at the penthouses. So those will simply be pavers on pedestals with some vegetation separating each unit. And then this is the overall plan, which gives you a sense of the amount of landscape we were able to squeeze onto this site. As Michael said, we've exceeded the green score requirements by quite a bit.
So that's the visual component of the presentation. Love to hear if you have any questions or comments for us.
I'm curious about the what is it? The fiber cement, the striated fiber cement. I'm not familiar with that product. Does it have any depth to it, or is it like painted colors, or can you describe it a little bit?
Sure. So the material itself is only about a ½ an inch deep in its thickness. It is through color, so it's intricately colored all the way through. So
yeah.
It's not a product that needs to be painted. It's not a product that you have to worry about looking, shabby or peeling, in the years ensuing after it's been constructed. The detail that we're going to have at the windows is going to create a fair amount of depth between the front of where that cement board is and where the actual windows are behind. I think there's about an 8 to 10 inch depth there, which we feel is a really great number in terms of getting both shading for the windows on the side and the top, but also for getting that great play of light across the facade. Particularly in the mornings for this facade.
Can we go back to the facade options, please?
Surely. So we'll start with the preferred, but any particular one you wanted to see?
No, there's no way to show them side by side.
I could do that. It might take me a moment though.
Would that help the rest of the commission? Or are we comfortable with the preferred?
In terms of the 3 facade options, I can say that I strongly prefer the one that they've gone with. Strongly prefer, and I appreciate having seen the other 2 because I think I like the one that they've gone with, and having now seen the other 2, I think it reinforces that I like the one that they went with. The facade option A to me feels extraordinarily heavy and out of characteristic with the neighborhood, which I think was identified by the team. And then the next one, I agree, that's nice. It feels like a monumental building. It feels like a library. It feels like something that would be the focal point of this neighborhood. And given the program, I don't think that's appropriate for an apartment building. So I think the way they've gone through these and ended up where they are, to me, it looks like a distinctive building that still belongs in East Somerville. Or could belong in East Somerville.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm really sort of fascinated by these striated panels. And do you do a custom pattern to them and then array them, upside down and right side up, so you can get the striations that sort of intermediate, that tertiary scale to them?
Yes, the shop
how does
drawing.
That work?
The shop drawing process on that is going to be intense. Yes, we're gonna. There is a pattern to it that once it's once our facade subcontractor is familiar with it, it will be fairly simple for them to pull it together. But certainly we're going to dictate every board there on that front.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
how
I wanted, oh,
strip?
oh,
Sorry.
I also wanted to comment on the penthouse level. I think I really appreciate the one that you're going with. So I agree. I think the preferred option is very strong, and it's it makes a lot of sense in its context. But I think the penthouse level is really quite wonderful. What you've done with that. So
thank you. I had a question that I actually wanted to pose back to Deborah, Andrew, and Frank on that. If you look at the image on the right, we are showing the Okoskin material sort of as infill where those setbacks are between the more frontal volumes that we're expressing there. And we've debated this a lot internally on the team here, whether or not only the back wall should be the Okoskin, or whether it should turn along the side, that kind of additional 4-foot side there.
I think it should turn. I think because if not, it becomes a little paper architecture, like applied. So, and I think that it needs to have that oomph of a reading, and I think that it needs to wrap around it to continue that reading. So I would say that you should definitely continue with that idea that it wraps to the side on it. Michael, the one question that I would have would be, just because I've encountered this many times and ends up unraveling as you're in construction documents and begins to change a lot of things, your transformer room, which is basically a vault room. A lot of times we initially design these things knowing what we believe we can accommodate, and then eventually NSTAR and Eversource come back and demand different requirements for what they want from a air infiltration, from the idea of air coming through it, opening, height, dimensions, clearances, and it can many times end up changing your facade and the dimensions. And one of the things that I want to make sure as you're moving forward with this is that, and it's hard because Eversource will not sit down with you right now because you're nowhere close to the project. So that would be my one component on the facade that I would be careful with, is that they can come back and, I've dealt with projects like this in Somerville and in Cambridge, and it could completely change many things. And probably you've experienced the same thing. So as much as you can present what you think that you want, the fact that it is in the front of the building and it is part of, the component of the building, I would be careful moving forward and try to have as many conversations with them. And I don't know how much influence we have from the city and from the planning department to really sit down with them. But, I would hate for this later on to come back and completely change that little, the little left corner of your building because that's not where they want to put their equipment. And you know what I mean by that. And you don't need to respond to it, but I would like to just put it on the record and make it aware that this is something that is concerning to me when you're dealing with a front facade, which is an elegant facade that you're proposing. And there's many things that are beautiful about it. And I would hate to lose those things after the fact and just go, well, this is what NSTAR wanted. And we have to just go, okay.
Well, we're pretty tenacious about those details. As you said, NSTAR does what they want, and they frequently change the rules. This is laid out per the sheet that they've issued for transformers of the size. But as you say, they have full authority to have us do anything they would like. But we are really tenacious about trying to make sure we're getting our way, making sure that the details are working, to the advantage of, our client for starters, but also the neighborhood. So the only thing I can promise you is we will work very hard with them to try to make sure that this is a great solution, and hope they don't.
And I would love to just, as you're moving through the process, I would love for you to keep the planning board department on the loop on that, just so that they're aware of what they're saying, and so we can hear some of it, because we had the same situation happen in one of our buildings in which we designed a vault room per the requirements that they gave us. When we then sat down with them doing construction documents, permitting, and like construction, they said, "Oh, we have new equipment now, and your room has got to change." And it changed a lot of things, and it's frustrating. But I just want to make sure that we're all aware of the fact that if it was in the back, if it was in the side, if it was not inside the building, it would be different. But you have it in the front, and it's a beautiful facade. And I just want to make sure that we work together to be able to maintain the fact that they don't disturb something of that nature.
Sure. No, that's a great comment, Frank.
And then, as the previous project that we said, I think one of the things that I would like to see is, like, I would love to really understand the palette of the materiality that you have. I know that you presented a board of what it looks like, but I think that, yes, I would like to see if there's a possibility of you getting some of those actual samples and creating either a board of some kind that can be photographed, that we can figure out how to see it, and look at it, so that we can get more familiar with really what the nature of the materiality is. I like the aqua skin that you're proposing. I would like to actually see it and touch it and make sure that we're all in agreement with what it comes up at the end.
How
Absolutely.
wide are those color variations, or is that something that can be customized also?
Well, they can be customized. That gets enormously expensive. They're about, I think they're either 4 or 5 inches in width, and they come in planks that are up to 8 feet. So we're because a single plank won't span an entire floor level, we're trying to do this kind of dovetail detail here with both the color and the joints of the panel to make sure that we're getting a sort of great kind of variety.
Is it panelized, or is it each of those stains individually?
Yeah, we may in fact panelize them ourselves and then kind of bring them onto the building. But each of those panels, when we purchase them or when we procure them, they're going to come as individual panels.
That's 5 inches by whatever.
By 8 feet, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Oh.
Interesting. Complicated. Have you guys used this product before?
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, on one of the slides that let's see, that Michael. This is why I like Michael as our landscape, because he decided to use as one of his precedents a project that we did. But here's in the upper left here. This is the Gerard in the South End. It's a project we did on Harrison Avenue, and this is that same Okoskin material. We use it a little bit differently here in terms of the patterning of it, but same material. It really goes up. It's quite simple, to be honest, and it's what we love about it is it's essentially like putting cement on the facade of your building, but without the look of cement. Not that we don't love cement, but or concrete, but it has that kind of durability. It's not like Hardy Panel. It's a very, very different product. It doesn't need to be painted. It doesn't start to fray. Water doesn't break it down. And it's used very much like in a rain screen configuration, which is going to allow us to have better continuous insulation on the outside of the building and achieve those passive house requirements much more easily.
So are you moving forward? So this is just a general question, I think, and Dan, this might be more a question for you. Are you moving this project forward with the idea that it is passive house, or you're moving forward with the base concept, hoping that it would become passive house?
So I wish I had our sustainability director here to tell you how we're approaching that, because that's something that we start working on from day one with any building. We find if you try to backtrack on it, it becomes very, very difficult to recoup and get your building to the place where it needs to be. So yeah, we are looking to do passive house on this. That is the plan.
And the only reason that I asked that is just because in the MR5, there's a requirement of the dwelling units per site, and it's, I think, 1,125 gross square feet versus 850 if you're doing passive house. That's correct, right, Dan?
That is correct. Yeah, I'm not Dan, but that's exactly correct.
No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to our leader here, Daniel
Zoning,
Barton.
that's true. Doing passive house allows higher density, and the sustainability division has criteria for submitting documentation of as they advance through the certification process that aligns up with the zoning approval, the building permit, and the certificate of occupancy stages as this continues to move forward.
I guess my question is just as I'm learning, we're all learning through this new zoning. Obviously, you know, UTL is designing this project as a passive house, and they're 850 gross square feet per unit, more or less. I mean, I would say. What happens if it doesn't qualify for that or decide not to pursue it? What happens at that point? Do they have to eliminate units?
No, the way the bonus works is that we grant it to them provided that they can follow through on all the steps, which also lead through registration of the project, payment of fees to FIAS, all the steps necessary to get to certification. But if the building failed at the very end, for instance, didn't pass its blower door test for some reason, that's a ramification that the city has determined it will live with. So you know, just efforts at achieving passive house, including going through the process with the agency, is what's been deemed to be compliance for that.
Okay. Just asking for educational purposes.
Louisa, did you have a question?
I did. I was hoping we could go back to the ground floor landscape plan, please. Yeah, so I wanted to understand a little bit more about the dog run and the system for containing dog waste and smells, please.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So yeah, that's a very common thing we come across, that very concern. As we get into it, we'll look at a couple different methods. I mean, one common way to deal with it is to make sure you have a really good permeable base, which we will for this project. And in addition to that, we'd like to add some irrigation heads to it so that it is continually being washed out. And that's, you know, one of the more common ways they deal with that is to have a scheduled, you know, spray of water on it to keep the odor down. But it will be a specific turf that's manufactured for this purpose that is made to drain vertically.
The other question I have on that is generally we don't allow dog runs in residential neighborhoods. Obviously, this is a little different because it's on your property, but there should be an area where there's a limit to how many dogs are in there at a time to avoid noises. We get a lot of complaints in dog parks and dog runs. And I would like to see the specifications of the turf system when you develop that. I have two additional comments on the open space. One is on the street trees. As they are developed, I'd like the urban forester to weigh in on their species because she's working on, you know, familiar with the whole urban canopy and she'll have species preferences. And then my last question is about the green roof and the sedum and how that is maintained in the long term.
Yes.
I think they're keeping the existing street trees.
Yeah, we'd like to try to keep the street trees, the existing ones, and as we move forward, we could take a really closer look and make sure that that's actually a viable option. We think it is now, but we'll definitely examine that, and we'll touch base with your arborist and work with them if needed.
Yeah, if you're just one note on that, if you're going to remove them, there's a process for that. So do be in touch with our division.
Sure. The green roof, as we develop this, we'll look at a couple of different ways to do it. This, since it's a small area, would probably do a tray system that has removable edges, so that essentially it allows the soil volumes to touch and the roots to touch and act as one piece. But it's put down as a tray. It's called live roof, and it's all sedum and it's good southern exposure. So we're confident that this will get the right amount of sun in this area, which is crucial for sedum. And ideally, I'd like to see some kind of low, very high efficiency irrigation system, just in case we get some really, brutal summer months or summer weeks. And that will really help at least, get it through those periods of time.
Sure. So our concern is more that the green roof helps in every way and with the green score. But once you walk away from the building, we want to know that in 10 years, it's still being maintained and is behaving in the way that it was intended to. So with all landscape stuff, we like to see some maintenance plans or some way that this is maintained over time, because what we would hate to happen is that it gets designed in and 3 years from now, all that sedum dries out because an irrigation head went out and, oh, well.
So, Louisa, I would just say that the sedum is an integral part of this amenity for our project. Pat, our client, is gonna, he's not selling this building, he's building it and holding it, and he will have his own, he will have an office actually in the building, both for leasing, but also just because he's going to be on site and maintaining the building. So I would say, boy, it would be a bad look for us if somebody came, was touring the building, wanted to rent from here, and walked out and all the sedum brown and dead. So that's we don't see that as a scenario that will happen. It's also very accessible. I mean, there's a door right out of the hallway to get out to this space. So getting to it is extremely easy, both by elevator or stair and right off the hallway. So we're confident that this is going to remain a great part of the amenity of the project for a very long time.
I think while we're on the landscape, I do really want to commend you for providing a series of plans that are very easy to read, that make a lot of sense. I really appreciate the overlay plan. And I appreciate you having a landscape architect and bringing him to this presentation. I think as a presentation for staff, this is a really good model for what I think we would like to see, and makes it easier for us to make a decision.
It's a team effort.
You might be able to see who the landscape architects on this call are.
We do that.
No, yeah, this looks nice. I don't have a ton of concerns. I think Luisa's points are absolutely valid. That said, like, sedum is probably the plant that I'm least worried about if you were to put it on a south-facing roof terrace. So.
Okay, so we've got a couple of votes to take. So the first one is does somebody want to make a motion that we vote on the preferred schematic design concept?
Muted.
Preferred, I vote for a motion to vote on the preferred motion.
Second.
Andrew seconds. All right, roll call vote. Andrew?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Louisa?
Yes.
Sarah, I also vote yes. The next vote would be on the storefront. Have we seen enough to be able to go through and look at the storefront and lobby entrance?
I support the preferred alternative and feel that I've seen good development from initial, from other thinking to the one that is being proposed as a preferred.
I second that.
All right, all right, so we have a motion seconded that the storefront and lobby entrances are appropriate. Roll call vote, Andrew.
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Louisa.
Yes.
I am going to vote no, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. I would like to have seen more information on the storefront. That motion carries.
If there are any preferred design guidelines
Right.
or priority, sorry.
Priority design guidelines.
I mean, we talked
If
about the
there's a
idea of
hearing
seeing
none,
them.
you can just accept all of them.
About keeping the planking.
Yeah, we did talk about the idea of seeing some materiality. I mean, I think does that fall into that?
Yeah, that would be, so we could say that the priority, the first one on the materials list, the selection of materials, fenestration, and ornamentation should result in a consistent and harmonious composition that appears as a unified whole rather than a collection of unrelated parts. So we could make that a priority design guideline, if that helps.
Yes.
All right, so Frank makes the motion that the first guideline under the materials category becomes a priority design guideline. Are there any others that we would like to make a priority before we vote?
I would say like what I mentioned on the fact that let's be on the loop on what happens with the room and its relationship to the facade and materials.
Okay.
So a similar condition like we've done with the previous case. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so do I have a second on the priority design guideline for the materials?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote, Andrew,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah?
Yeah.
Louisa?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So that's unanimous. We also have to take a vote that all the other design guidelines, we feel like they have been met to our satisfaction.
So moved.
I second. Yes.
Okay, moved by Deborah, seconded by Frank. Roll call, Andrew.
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah.
Yeah.
Louisa.
Yes.
And I, Sarah, also vote yes. What else do we need to vote on, Dan? Are we good?
That's all that's required by the rules of the board of the commission. So that's your to the UTL team. That's your design review. Within 45 days we will transmit a written recommendation, but we expect to deliver it in less time.
Okay,
this also means that you can move on to your second neighborhood meeting.
Great.
At your own. You have to wait 15 days, but at your own leisure.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Pat, our client, would be mad at me if I don't mention this, but he is very anxious to move ahead, and so we appreciate any comments we could get from you, that would be terrific. And we will be scheduling with Rebecca the next community meeting as soon as we can.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank you so much.
our work is done this evening.
Thank you, Michael.
Very nice project.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah, Frank, Andrew. Really appreciate the comments. As always, these processes always end up with a little bit either more conviction in what you're doing or a better direction, and so we really appreciate all the feedback. All right, Sarah, are we done?
You're done, Michael. You can feel free to leave.
Okay.
Next
Great.
up would be a motion to adjourn if everybody's.
Sure, yes.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Andrew, Frank, Deborah. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I move to adjourn this meeting
I
after a
second.
15-hour workday.
Let's fight over our second. Deborah seconds. Roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Louisa.
Oh, God, yes.
So one last question before we all leave.
I seconded that.
Go
One
ahead,
last
Frank.
question before we all leave. How does everybody feel about trying to see if we can move these things to a little bit more of a reasonable time? That either be in 6 or something, just so it doesn't seem like it's a long day. I mean, it's 8:30. It seems to be that
Yep.
I've been working since 8 o'clock for me, so it's 12 hours. So, if
I'm
there's
all
the
about it.
possibility,
Yeah.
and I also have to deal
I
with my
like-
kids, and so.
I think as long as we're virtual, this makes a lot of sense because we just stay in our seats
Yeah.
and keep going.
Right, that's why it's not like we have to show up somewhere. We can, I mean, I'm in the Berkshires right now, so,
Yeah. I agree with Deborah. I think, yeah, virtual, it makes no difference to me. A little hard to get there by 6, but we're going to be virtual for a long time.
One other quick update. We have a kind of a uniform job application open for various board seats, and we have had 12 people express interest. So we might end up with some more UDC members in short order.
Yay.
The approval process can be long, but at least we have some applicants.
That's great.
Oh.
I don't know who they all are yet.
Good
Sure, they're
luck.
delightful.
Okay, so I think we have a unanimous motion to, we just voted, so
Yep, that's it.
adjourn 28 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas noches.
Thanks. Ciao.